You're ugly. You are disgusting. I'm going to kill you. Give me $200.
Hi, I'm Cece and welcome back to my channel. I have been on a little break as I explained my last video, but I am back. If you are not already subscribed and you would like to be, please go ahead and do that down below. You can also follow me on Instagram, Twitter, I guess TikTok. I'm trying to do TikTok. I'm 25, which is like 75 in TikTok years. Yeah. So Dr. Phil, whose real name is Philip McGraw, started his TV career by appearing in his own segment on the Oprah Winfrey Show. And then in 2002, he got his own show produced by Oprah's production company, Harpo Studios. Much like everything Oprah touches, it seems his show was a crazy success. By 2008, it was the second most popular daytime talk show on air, second only to the Oprah Winfrey Show. And today, the Dr. Phil Show has been on for 18 years and counting. I should say that for the sake of this video, I'm going to act as if all of his guests and their scenarios are real. I'm not really convinced that they are. But since it's impossible to know which ones are real and which ones are staged, I'm just gonna pretend that they're all real. Now, Dr. Phil has always gotten a lot of flack for being a hack and not a real doctor. He does, however, have a doctorate in clinical psychology, so I'm going to give him that he is technically a real doctor. He did go to school and earn the title of doctor. However, calling himself Dr. Phil and positioning himself on TV as some kind of practicing therapist or psychologist is misleading at best. Firstly, because he stopped renewing his license in 2006. So if he is indeed practicing psychology on his show, he's doing so without a license. Secondly, because his actions and the way he conducts his show do not really seem to align with those of someone whose primary concern is their patient's mental health and well-being. In 2003, the National Alliance for Mental Illness says that the show represents a breach of professional ethics, but also, in the opinion of many, malpractice. If you've ever seen the Dr. Phil show, you've probably noticed that it typically does not paint a very sympathetic picture of its victims, guests. Dr. Phil's signature move is shutting down bratty teenagers with witty one-liners, and then his audience erupts into applause. You know, like a therapist would do. So we have a millionaire TV show host in his 70s getting combative with and publicly humiliating a potentially mentally ill teenager. Other times, Dr. Phil does portray his guests in a more sympathetic light, such as when he had this woman on to discuss her childhood trauma. Even though Dr. Phil on the surface seems to be treating this woman with kindness and empathy, he literally puts up a list of her lifelong traumas on this floor-to-ceiling screen and reads them out loud. He's basically parading this woman's trauma around for entertainment and profit.
As unimaginable as this story is, you haven't heard the worst of it yet.
On the next Dr. Phil.
And this woman is probably in need of real therapy, not a gimmicky TV doctor to parade her trauma around on national TV for others to gawk at. And I feel like, not to get on my political soapbox, but I'm always getting on my political soapbox. The context of the US healthcare system adds another layer to this. Mental health care in this country is typically not affordable or accessible at all, and so I can see how someone who needs real help or real therapy and may not be able to afford it might think doing something like going on the Dr. Phil show is their best option. When you boil it down, the Dr. Phil show is really just another sensationalized talk show like Maury or the Jeremy Kyle show. It's just dressed up with an intellectual, morally redeemable spin. Except I think I actually have more respect for those guys because they're at least honest about what they're doing. In the last few years, there's also been an increase in what seems like people going on the Dr. Phil show and just acting outrageously for notoriety and attention. One of the first guests to rise to fame after her appearance on the show was Danielle Bregoli. You probably know her by her rap name, Bad Baby. That Gucci Flip Flop song kind of slaps though, I have to admit. You might also know her just as the Catch Me Outside girl.
Catch me outside, how about that?
Catch you outside? What does that mean?
What I just said.
She was only 13 when she appeared on the show in 2016. Danielle represented a classic trope on the Dr. Phil show. The desperate parent drags their out-of-control teenager on the show so Dr. Phil can tell them to sit down and shut up, and his studio audience eats it up. In the case of Danielle, she quickly became an internet meme. She was able to take the brief moment of fame she got from appearing on Dr. Phil and turn it into a rap career, a makeup line, and more. However, she just turned 18 in March of this year. I think it's important to remember how young this girl is and how young she was when she appeared on the show. Bringing a child onto a show like this to basically sensationalize their situation, scold them, and laugh at them on national TV, that's not what any troubled teenager needs. Once again, she probably could have benefited from actual therapy and professional help. Danielle has also recently spoken out about her experience at Turnabout Ranch, where Dr. Phil sent her after she appeared on the show. In his quest to help troubled teenagers like Danielle, Dr. Phil is notorious for sending them to Turnabout Ranch. Turnabout Ranch is a live-in facility in Utah, supposedly designed to help teenagers with behavior problems. Dr. Phil frames this as him generously helping out these kids and their families and sending them to get help. However, the troubled teen industry as a whole is just notoriously terrible. I might actually do a whole video on it because I've been reading about it a lot and it's actually just really horrific, so let me know if you'd be interested in that. But Turnabout Ranch seems like no exception. Their website states, "At Turnabout Ranch, therapy, academics, and hard work come together to impart lasting and powerful change in teens. Located on a working cattle ranch, our program has students take concepts like leadership, teamwork, accountability, and responsibility and put them into practice in a real-world environment." So the idea is that kids go here, it teaches them good old-fashioned work ethic and fixes them. However, in 2021, a Colorado teenager filed a lawsuit against the ranch, claiming that she was not only abused and SA'd while she was there in 2018, but that she was also punished when she tried to confide in female staff members about the alleged essay. There are also dozens of posts on Reddit and other forums of people with similar stories who claimed that they were starved and physically or psychologically harmed while staying at the ranch. Now keep in mind, these are all anonymous posts, so this is all alleged. Please don't sue me. One post from earlier this year says, "I don't ever want another kid to go through what myself and so many others have gone through. I don't want another kid to suffer from the PTSD I still struggle with 17 years after leaving Burnout Ranch. I can personally attest to witnessing and experiencing verbal, emotional, physical abuse by staff and R-word/SA that would go unpunished and unreported due to the staff blaming girls and calling them liars. No child deserves this." Around 2003 to 2004, I witnessed staff member Myron calling a black kid I'm not going to say that, and not going to say that either. Staff member Wayne smashing a lesbian's head into the wall and calling her okay, I also can't say that. Director Max taking me out for private one-on-one walks in the desert to press me about my sexual activity while caressing me. Not to mention being so hungry that I stole a box of crackers and was sent back to the first level for simply being hungry. My mail sent to my family was read by my counselor Tina, and I was punished just for trying to write to my brother and tell him what I was seeing and experiencing. All of this is just some of what I experienced. I thought of suicide daily while I was here to escape the nightmare. 17 years later, I still suffer from PTSD from being kidnapped in the middle of the night by strangers without knowing who they were or where I was going. I still suffer from flashbacks. All this place did was torture me for 90 days, and I'd do anything to keep another kid from experiencing the pain I still feel from this place. Still others have said that they were forcibly taken to Turnabout Ranch to serve as treatment for their addiction, but that they were not given proper medical care or supervision while they were going through withdrawals. I probably don't need to tell you that is really dangerous and potentially deadly. I also watched this video as I was researching for this by Big Joel. It's called The Conservative Propaganda of Dr. Phil. I really recommend it. I'll link it below if you haven't seen it yet. In this video, he says that what Dr. Phil's message often boils down to, I just thought this was really good, is your bootstraps haven't been pulled, you should probably pull them. I think Dr. Phil got popular in the first place for being this tough love, tell it like it is talk show host. The problem with that is that pull yourself up by your bootstraps advice is not always helpful. I mean, I tend to think it's unhelpful in most cases. For example, I don't think telling people who are living in chronic poverty to just get it together is very useful. But pull yourself up by your bootstraps advice is perhaps especially unhelpful to people who are struggling with mental health issues or with substance abuse, like many of the people who appear on Dr. Phil. Dr. Phil's show often devolves into him just scolding whoever's the most in the wrong. The problem with that is that whoever is most in the wrong is also often the one who's most in need of help, and just yelling at them and telling them how wrong they are is not particularly helpful, it turns out. I saw a 2016 episode of Dr. Phil recently where he had on a family. It was a mom and then her grown son and daughter. The mom and her son were both struggling with addiction. The daughter had children of her own and she was just trying and failing to help her mom and her brother. It was just a really sad situation, and it was clear that these are three people who love each other and care about each other but are just in horrible circumstances. Dr. Phil's solution to this, his professional advice, was to basically just berate the mom and the son the whole time, and to tell the son that he needs to get it together and stop spending so much money on substances and get a real job. He starts off by basically blaming the son for getting his mother dependent on these substances in the first place because he first brought them to her, even though she readily admits that she was using pills and alcohol long before. She explains how her addiction progressed, that it started with Oxycontin that she was prescribed.
Oxycontin, pain pills. It was well known that if you take the pain pills, that people are switching over to heroin. It's cheaper, it's more readily available.
She asks Dr. Phil if that makes sense to him, to which he replies, hell no.
It gradually turned into that from the pain medication. Doesn't make sense to you?
Oh, hell no.
Doesn't make sense to anybody.
Oh, hell no, it doesn't make sense to me. Are you serious?
It doesn't? Surely, as a mental health professional, Dr. Phil should be aware that that's actually an incredibly common way that people become dependent on substances. We have an opioid epidemic in this country for a reason. Doctors overprescribe pain pills because for-profit pharmaceutical companies push them to. People become dependent on them, and then out of desperation, they switch to harder or illegal substances. It happens all the time. This is such a common problem that Purdue Pharmaceuticals, which is the manufacturer of Oxycontin, settled an $8.3 billion lawsuit last year and pled guilty to 3 felonies. Dr. Phil goes on to call the mother, I quote, a ridiculous excuse for a parent.
Does that make sense to me?
It does not.
No, it's ridiculous. It's disgusting. That's a ridiculous excuse for a parent.
And to make things even worse, throughout this entire episode, his guests are not even trying to defend their substance use. They're presumably on this show in the first place because they both know they have a problem and they want help. But even as they agree with him, Dr. Phil continues to berate them.
The hell's the matter with you?
I don't know. That's what I want to find out.
This approach is in line with his brand of tough love advice, and it definitely gets the desired reaction from his audience. But in this whole episode, Dr. Phil just completely ignores the complexity of addiction and treats it as if it's just a moral failure and a lack of willpower. Most experts now agree that addiction is not, in fact, either of those things, but is a chronic disease and should be treated as such. A 2016 article on the University of Michigan's health blog says, addiction does not occur because of moral weakness, a lack of willpower, or an unwillingness to stop. This finding stems from decades of work investigating the effects of substance use on the brain. So Dr. Phil's advice to just stop doing drugs and get a real job may not, in fact, be super helpful. In the worst scenarios, the Dr. Phil show has allegedly provided guests with substances or advised them on where to seek out those substances. I should say that the Dr. Phil show officially denies all of the allegations I'm about to discuss. In 2013, Survivor winner Todd Herzog appeared on the show amidst a serious struggle with alcoholism. He appeared on stage clearly intoxicated, and he later claimed that a bottle of vodka had been left in his dressing room and that he was given a Xanax by a staffer in order to calm his nerves. I probably don't need to tell you that that is a potentially deadly combination. Another guest appeared on the show with her niece who was struggling with addiction. She says that her niece started experiencing withdrawals as soon as they arrived in LA for the show, but she was provided with no supervision or medical help. When she brought this to the attention of producers, she said that they were actually directed to Skid Row and told where to buy substances, and that her niece, quote, bought heroin with the knowledge and support of show staff prior to the taping of the show. Yet another guest, a pregnant woman, was allegedly filmed by Dr. Phil's show staff as she searched for a dealer on Skid Row. Once again, the Dr. Phil show denies all of these claims. So the Dr. Phil show clearly has a habit of being extremely exploitative of people who are struggling with their mental health or are otherwise at a low point in their lives. And celebrities are no exception. Several times, Dr. Phil has been very quick to swoop in when a famous person is having a public crisis. In 2008, in the midst of Britney Spears' very public mental health crisis, Dr. Phil actually visited her in her hospital room. It seemed at the time that he was trying to get Britney to appear on his show to stage a televised intervention. Now, given what we've already discussed, ask yourself, was this out of genuine concern for Britney and a belief that he was the best person who could help her? Or was this because he saw everyone sensationalizing and taking interest in this woman's personal tragedy and he saw an opportunity for great ratings and to make a lot of money? There's no way to know for sure, but to me, it seems like maybe it was the latter. To make this even worse, after he visited her in the hospital, Dr. Phil spoke to Entertainment Tonight and gave public statements about Britney's condition. He was then criticized for practicing psychology without a license and also for violating doctor-patient confidentiality. I suppose it's really one or the other. If he's practicing without a license, then he's not a licensed mental health professional in the first place, so he can't really be violating doctor-patient confidentiality. In the midst of all the public backlash he got for this, Dr. Phil gave a half-baked apology in the form of a blog post. He stated that he and his wife, Robin, were friends with the Spears family and that he was just doing his best to be a good friend. He also claimed that a televised interview with Britney was never the plan. He instead just wanted to do a sit-down interview with her mother, Lynn Spears, which is just not like a whole lot better in my opinion. Dr. Phil also had actress Shelley Duvall on his show in 2016 when she was in the midst of a severe mental health crisis. Shelley Duvall played Wendy in the movie The Shining, which is a role that she has since said took an immense toll on her mental health. In this 2016 interview with Dr. Phil, she seems disoriented and just, in my completely non-clinical opinion, I just see someone who is very deeply unwell. This interview drew criticism from a lot of celebrities, including Mia Farrow, Ronan Farrow, Patton Oswalt, even Stanley Kubrick's daughter Vivian, who wrote a pretty scathing condemnation of it on Twitter. In an interview earlier this year, Duvall herself said of Dr. Phil that she found out the kind of person he is the hard way. In 2019, former Dr. Phil show guest Kaden Mahaffey filed a lawsuit against Dr. Phil for emotional distress and fraud. She initially agreed to appear on the show with her boyfriend to discuss the abuse that he had suffered as a child. However, talking to producers pre-show, she apparently told them that she believed she had psychic powers and supernatural abilities. And I guess that was just too good for Dr. Phil to pass up. When she got on stage, he instead interrogated her about this, encouraged the audience to laugh at her. Throughout this whole thing, she actually stays remarkably calm, but it's very clear that she is really upset and caught off guard. She tells Dr. Phil that she is not in a good space right now and that she feels like she's being totally attacked, and he continues to press her.
Do you have x-ray vision?
Yeah,
I have a lot of broken bones. Can you tell me where they are?
I'm not in a good space right now. I feel like I'm being totally attacked, and it's
No,
not.
you're being questioned because you're making some claims, and if you
Yeah,
make those
and
claims,
I'm
then
right
you need to be
about my
prepared.
claims. I
Well,
am.
you need to be prepared to defend them.
After the show, this guest apparently suffered a breakdown backstage. Police were called and she was involuntarily committed to a mental health facility. Her lawsuit alleges that Dr. Phil is a powerful Hollywood celebrity who uses his fame and credibility as a mental health professional to gain the trust of mentally ill psychiatric patients, only to turn around and publicly humiliate them for the sake of good television ratings and advertising dollars. I wasn't able to find an update about this lawsuit as of 2021, but I think that pretty well sums it up. I think that pretty well sums up this whole video. One single positive I will give Dr. Phil is that viewers of his show are statistically more likely to seek out mental health care for themselves and for their children. However, does this outweigh all the negatives of his show and the way that he conducts it? I don't think so. I feel like there are probably ways to raise awareness about mental health that don't involve preying on people who are in the darkest moments of their lives and humiliating them on national TV. Like, I'm no expert, but I just have a feeling you could do something else for mental health awareness. So anyway, that is it for today's video. I hope that you guys enjoyed this. I am so happy to be back and making videos again because I really missed it. I've just had so much going on that I have not had time, but it's good to be back. So if you're still here and you were patient with me, thank you. Love you guys. Please let me know what you think down below. If you liked this video, please don't forget to like and subscribe and follow me on my social medias if you want. I will catch you guys in the next one. Bye.